time wishes to go into a remote virtual learning plan, that student will go immediately into that and follow the plan that they would be following while they had been in school. At the elementary level, the student would then be placed in a remote learning plan. It would be with a different teacher, as opposed to the teacher that they originally had. The reason for that is because we are designating specific teachers at the elementary level in grades K through 6 for those parents who wish to have their child taught remotely. If students wish to go back into a in-person environment, at that point at the elementary level, we will consider that at the second trimester, which is the beginning of the second trimester is in December, and the beginning of the third trimester sometime in March. So parents will have the opportunity to do that. Again, they would be switching teachers. At the secondary level, if a parent opted for their child to come back into an in-person learning environment, at that point, that student would go right back with the same teachers that they had, and that could be done at the beginning of the second semester, which is February 1. The reason that we're doing that is to keep groupings together and make sure that we have adequate space to address all of the students' needs and maintain physical distancing.
All right, wonderful, thank you. Is there any way to get you all closer to your mics? We're having a little bit of trouble. We can hear you, but we just can't hear you loudly.
Come down and
yeah,
it sounds like it's too low, right?
We're too far away, Sue.
I think so. I think that might.
Okay, we don't have microphones in front of us. It's a microphone for the room. It's picking us up. So maybe if we talk louder.
Okay.
I can shout, and we're working with IT to address that.
Okay, that would be great. So we'll move on in the meantime to our next question, which is frequent testing has been shown to identify cases early on and reduce COVID spread by asymptomatic carriers. Are there any circumstances under which the district will require testing for students or staff?
John Mason is going to take that question.
Right. So we are conducting. Thank you. This is going to be a lot of movement. We are conducting health screenings every day where we're asking parents to fill it out for students, but also staff members asking whether you've traveled to a location that's a travel advisory, whether you have symptoms or have been exposed to someone who has COVID. But at this point, we are not making or requiring COVID testing of anyone. That is left to the physician or to a clinic that a person might be recommended to go to based on their doctor.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to apologize in advance because some of these questions may get redundant based on the answers that were given, but I don't want to gyp anybody of their questions, so we'll just continue to read them as is. Next question is, how will students, teachers, and families be notified of confirmed cases? What about suspected cases?
Okay, so I'll take that one as well. So for confirmed cases, once we learn that someone has tested positive, I contact the Department of Health, who then institutes the contact tracing. We've been told by the Department of Health that they can get that completed in 24 hours. So we would know, we would be able to share that someone has tested positive, but not the actual name of the student or of the person. The reason that is left to the Department of Health is that we see the students for 6 or 6.5 hours during the day. They can come in contact with many people outside the school day. So that is left to the Department of Health to do that contact tracing.
All right, very good, thank you. The next question, you may get to stay in your seat. If a whole family has to quarantine, will the absences be counted against the healthy students?
No, if an entire family needs to quarantine, they will switch to remote learning. Attendance will be taken in remote learning. So really it doesn't count against them, just their learning location changes.
Okay, Very good. Next question. If masks are not required during recess, but social distancing will be enforced, what are some of the activities that will be allowed? Will the kids be allowed to use playground equipment?
So, no, masks will not be required during recess as long as students are physically distanced from one another. And we will use our monitors to make certain that the students are keeping distance from one another. The building principals are working with our staff at this point to develop appropriate activities that students can engage in without being in physical contact with one another. And yes, they may use the playground equipment. At this point, the DOH is stating that the playground equipment does not need to be cleaned in between students utilizing that. That is not necessary because that does not cause the transmission of COVID. So we would not be doing that at this point, but we would allow them to play on the equipment.
Thank you. In the scenario where the schools have to go on full remote learning again, what is the quantity of real-time learning that families can expect?
So if the students are at the secondary level, they're following their schedule. So it's the same schedule they would have if they were in school during the day. Nothing varies with that. If they're on the remote option. That's the same. They're following along with everyone else. In the elementary level, they'll also have the same amount of time, but the elementary levels, each class has its own separate schedule. So the classroom teacher that they have will be with them for a certain portion of time, but then they have to go to specials such as art, music, health, phys ed. That will also be done remotely. So it will vary. We're trying to do as much as possible with having the real-time instruction, but at the same time cognizant of the fact that we don't want to have students, especially the younger ones, on all day long on a device. That would not be healthy.
Thank you. If parents choose remote learning but are not with their children to observe the real-time instruction, can they watch recorded videos of the actual lesson later on? This would be very helpful for working parents who sometimes struggle with providing accurate and meaningful support to their kids.
We are not recording any class lessons at all, no. So we are not doing that. If a parent has any difficulty, the teachers are available at any time for contact, with emails, even a phone call, and they can discuss whatever issues are going on. So the extra help will be available through the teacher as well. So at all levels, there is that contact between the teachers and the students.
Okay, thank you. How will the school district plan to continue with the 504 services if the parents choose to have their children study remotely? The PT, OT, speech therapy, etc., would really be needed regardless of the virus.
So all of the remote services, if a parent opts for remote learning, that would include all of the OT, PT, and speech services. And those will be provided in real-time teacher facilitated learning, just as the rest of the instruction will be delivered.
Thank you. Why is the district committed to opening the cafeterias when indoor dining is frowned upon statewide? Wouldn't your staff be better able to manage the students and the inherent risks of loosely structured time without masks if all students spent their lunch period in a smaller classroom setting?
Sorry for the movement. So at our, I'll start with our secondary schools. We have moved out all of the long tables, and instead of the long tables, we have put in individual desks in each of the cafeterias that are separated by 6 feet. We will be showing a visual of that on our FAQs. We believe that provides for an opportunity for students to eat in the cafeteria, to get their lunch in a timely manner. And for those students who cannot be accommodated there, we will be using our auditorium for students, and the building principals at the junior high school are working out a system to address that. At the high school level, for those students who cannot be accommodated in the cafeteria, we will be using classroom settings to address those students during their lunch periods. There are many more lunch periods at the high school level compared to the junior high school level. And we believe that the program that we have put in place is safe. And those desks will be disinfected after each lunch period. We have staff that are prepared to do that, and we are staggering it so that we can be able to do that in a timely fashion. At the elementary level, the building principals, we do have the long tables. We are putting 3 children at a table. They will be 6 feet apart. We will also show a visual of how that is done. And those lunch periods are being staggered to limit the number of students in the cafeteria. We got to have the children in the classroom might be more difficult with the students moving around and keeping separate from one another. So we do believe that this is a better solution to addressing that need.
Thank you. On a similar note, at the elementary level, why not keep the students constant with their classroom cohort and have all special area teachers push in?
So we are having health push-in. We will have art push-in as well if there is not room in the art classes, depending on the number of students that would be present in the classroom. Because if we have 12 to 13 students in a class, we could accommodate those students in the art room. In the art rooms, there will be gloves, child-sized gloves for students that will be disposable, so that if they are sharing any art materials, they will be able to dispose of those gloves and share those materials safely. With regard to physical education, we will not be combining classes that has been done in the past. Those students will be kept separate. We will be using outdoor spaces as much as possible, weather permitting. And we also, in our elementary schools, most of them having mini gym, we will be using those facilities as well to separate the students and provide for those activities. Music classes. If we are able to separate the students, especially if they're using any kind of instruments by 12 feet, they will be in their own classrooms. Otherwise, we will be using the auditorium and other large spaces in the building to address this.
All right, thank you. How will the district enforce mask wearing? If a child has a medical condition that would prevent them from being able to wear a mask, wouldn't it be best if that student learned remotely rather than possibly exposing all of the other children and staff to a potential risk?
So if a student has a medical reason for why a mask cannot be worn, the district legally does not have the authority to prevent that student from accessing their right to a free and appropriate education. The district cannot say to a parent or student, you cannot be in class. That is just legally not possible, nor would the district do that.
Thank you. Is there a magic number of students that must opt for the remote learning option in order for the district to be able to maintain the New York State required health standards in the buildings for the students who have chosen to attend in person?
There is no magic number. At this point, we are collecting data through a survey. At last count, we had about 40% of our parents who had responded. That survey date is August 21, which is next Friday, and we are asking every parent to complete that information for us. We are estimating that the number of parents choosing a remote option could be between 20 and 30%. At the elementary level, our class sizes are small in nature. And we know that in a classroom setting, our smallest classroom at the elementary with 6 feet apart, we can get 18 to 20 desks in the elementary level. In our largest classrooms at the elementary level, we can get 23 desks. We don't believe that we are going to have anywhere near 20 or 23 students in an elementary classroom. Because of the class size. At the junior high and high school level, we have asked our building principals to look at their current master schedules. They are looking to reduce the number of students in each classroom so that we can provide 6 feet of distance and also have class sizes of around 18. That is the number that we are aiming for in order to create socially distant students within the secondary classrooms. We feel that obviously we're going to need to have additional staffing in order to address that. But we are also looking to collapse some electives. And I just want to specify when I say electives, I'm not speaking to art and music. I am specifically talking about electives that may be under-enrolled and where students would have an opportunity to take those electives at a later time. We would not be looking to limit the electives for our juniors and seniors, seniors because they are using that for, obviously, for their college admission. And this would be their last opportunity to participate in those classes. For juniors who also would be looking to take these classes in preparation for post-secondary, their post-secondary choices, we would want to offer that opportunity for them as well. We feel that our ninth graders and sophomores will have additional opportunity in the future, so priority would be given to juniors and seniors.
Okay, great, thank you. Will schools look at each sport separately when deciding which ones can go forward? Sports like fencing already involve masks, gloves, and remaining socially distant at sword's length. Will the pool possibly be reopened for girls' varsity swimming and diving?
Okay. So I'll take the first one. Section 11 has been very clear in stating that they will not be looking at sports on an individual basis. We know that some sports, such as golf and tennis, may have far less contact than sports such as football and wrestling. However, Section 11 has taken the position that they're either going to offer all or none. And so we don't make those decisions internally. Those are external decisions made at the state and local level. And therefore, we will wait for direction. At this point, we have been told that things would not start until September 21 if they were to implement the athletic program for the fall. We are awaiting information. We've been told that we may hear something by August 24th. So I've been in contact with Mr. Finnerty, who is our executive director in that area. And we're just waiting, just like any other school district, as to how we will proceed. With regard to the pool, that would pretty much fall under the same guidance. At this point, the pool is closed. We will continually reevaluate that, but for purposes of physical education for sophomores, they will not be using the pool for this year at this point. However, things could change and the pool may reopen, but again, we would wait for further guidance from the state level.
Okay, thank you. If there is a child or staff member or a member of their immediate family who tests positive for COVID, how will the district handle this? It seems especially complicated at the secondary level, where that student or teacher will have had contact with 9 periods of different people.
It is complicated at the secondary level, but again, we'll find out that information following the contact tracing. The district will participate fully in providing the Department of Health with information such as the student schedule or the staff member schedule, attendance records, any visitors that might be in the building. But we will, the people that need to be concerned are those that have close contact. Close contact is if you are less than 6 feet away for more than 10 minutes. So we would again follow the Department of Health guidance on contacting everyone who's come in contact with someone who's tested positive.
Thank you. If a high school student does not have a lunch period, will they be allowed to eat during class as they have in the past?
We will certainly make accommodations for a student who is unable or who has desired not to have a lunch period. That we would probably want that student to have a shield in front of them while eating lunch, because that would prevent the emission of any kind of aerosols. We'd be concerned about that and probably try to distance that student as much as possible, but we'd make arrangements for that individual.
Thank you. As we understand it, there will be 1 teacher per grade for the elementary remote option. How will that work if there is a great number of students, say 50 or more? Would a second teacher be added so that she or he can build a relationship with each of their students?
Absolutely.
Okay. Will a teacher's absence count against them? As a parent, this is important. A teacher who isn't afraid to take time off to properly quarantine will ultimately help their students remain healthy.
Yes, every absence will count against them, and we're encouraging all through our directives to the staff that when in doubt, they need to take off.
Okay, so just to clarify, count again, it counts, but it's allowed. It's not going to count against them. It's not a bad mark against them.
Not a bad mark against them, but they will be just as if they visited a hot state, for example. They have to, they have to take the time, they have to use their time, but we understand that life happens too, but they will need to use their time.
Okay, thank you. All right, here's a short series of questions about our music programs. They are, will there be concerts? Will there be lessons and early rehearsals? If so, can remote learners participate in these, and how would that work?
So for the fall semester, there will not be concerts at this time. We will reevaluate that as we get closer. We'll reconsider that for the spring as we go forward. As far as lessons and early rehearsals, we will continue to do those in person. Students who are remote can come in. We're working with Mr. Blair, who's the director of the music program, and the music teachers on how effectively to do that. It will involve the use of their devices that will be given to them by the district, and the teachers' use of their device at the lesson time.
Thank you. How many days prior to the start of symptoms would contact with the sick person count as possible exposure?
So when I contact the Department of Health and let them know that someone in the district has tested positive, they will reach out to that individual and provide that information. Typically, it's 2 or 3 days.
Thank you. In the junior high schools, how will you determine who eats where and where they will sit? Will it be by grade, by last name?
Junior high school principals are working on a plan for that. And at the forum on Tuesday, Ms. Keene will address that in detail.
Thank you. Is there any hesitation to use our over $20 million in reserves to purchase equipment, hire additional staff, et cetera, to keep our children safe? If yes, why? Private businesses worldwide have deemed this an emergency worthy of dipping into their reserves.
Yes, absolutely. We'll use our reserves. When we always, over the years, when we make the argument as to why we need reserves, this is the exact kind of thing that they're for. So anyway, the short answer is yes, absolutely. We will be using our reserves as much as we need to get through this.
Thank you. At the elementary level, with only 3 students per lunch table, will each grade level be able to have lunch together? If not, how many additional periods will be needed to get through lunch for each grade?
Not all grade levels will be able to eat lunch together. It will depend on each of the schools. And again, on Tuesday, Ms. DeBella, who is part of the task force, will be addressing all issues with regard to elementary lunch periods in detail.
Thank you. If the secondary students use an outdoor route to pass between classes, will it be marked off for them? How will social distancing be enforced?
There will be security staff and other staff outside to help guide the students through that path. And so we feel pretty confident that students, will have their masks on if they do take their masks off and they are able to separate just to get some fresh air. That will be monitored by the security staff and other staff that will be outside.
Thank you. What happens if a symptomatic student can't be picked up immediately, especially if 2 symptomatic students are isolated together? If one has COVID and the other does not, the risk of transmission is increased.
Well, in all likelihood, we wouldn't know at that point if students are in the isolation room whether or not one has COVID or one doesn't, because we wouldn't have tested those students at that particular moment in time. We will try to keep those students as separate as we possibly can. Again, it could be that both students have symptoms, but neither one of them has COVID or both of them has COVID. So we would work with parents, which is why we're asking parents also to complete the information on the parent portal with emergency contacts. because we need to be able to get those students picked up as quickly as possible. Again, I want to point out that we are going to have 2 RNs in each of our buildings. At the high school, there will be 3. And so it could be where if we have 2 students who are ill at the same time, we may utilize both RNs and try to separate those students. And we have other staff that can remain in what we're calling the injury or medication room while we're addressing those issues. But we would ask parents that if you are working or you are in a place where you cannot get to your child as quickly as possible, that you have designated other individuals that can and pick your child up. It is important that we try to get students out of the building as quickly as possible for everyone's safety, but also for the comfort and safety of that child.
Yeah. Please describe how 12-foot separations will be achieved for activities like playing woodwinds or singing.
But the way that we are going to do that, so for band and choral classes, some of our teachers have expressed the desire to teach outside, which we think is a wonderful idea as long as weather permits. And when that is not taking place, we will be using larger venues especially at the secondary level, which would be our auditorium and cafeteria. And we will also use the auditoriums at the elementary level. Fortunately, in our district, we do have these larger spaces that can be utilized for this purpose. There are also masks that Mr. Clara has ordered for choral, and there are specific, I'm going to call them like slip covers, even though I know that's not the appropriate terminology, for the instruments that have been ordered also.
Thank you. Have you considered shortening the school day to lessen exposure? Are half days an option?
We have not considered shortening the school day. We have to keep in mind that although we have health and safety issues that we need to comply with and address, the governor at this point and state education department have not lessened the number of hours. At the elementary level, we must have 900 hours. At the secondary level, 990 hours within 180-day instructional year must occur. So if we were to shorten the days, that we would not be able to comply with the requirements as put forth by the state education department. Also, if we had half days, we would have serious transportation concerns because we wouldn't have enough buses to transport the students back and forth. For those parents who wish to have transportation, and as we all know in our district, we provide full transportation K-12. That was decided at one of the, I think it was 2013 or 2014, where we were going to have full transportation. That was propositioned by the community.
Thank you. For students in DTC, how will special education teachers properly modify curriculum across classes? What changes have you made since the spring to ensure these improvements? Doing it in real time is not an option for the number of students they need to handle, and during remote instruction, it's difficult for them to reach everyone.
Right. So it is, I recognize it was very difficult in the spring for DTC teachers to know how to support their students. What they will do, we are providing professional development opportunities for the teachers at the beginning of the school year, and that will include ways to support students in the DTC classes. The special ed teacher will work to implement the modifications that are on the IEP, and that would be coordinating in collaboration with the general education teacher, which thanks to the Google platform makes things much easier to do that.
Thank you. Will AIS pullouts for reading and math continue at the elementary schools?
Yes. And we will continue all the same services, support services that we would if the students were in school or out of school. It's all in the same place. They will be pulled out for those services.
Thank you. If a parent chooses to be a driver but finds that one day they cannot drop off or pick up, can they get their student on the bus?
Yes, absolutely. Just like normal, we would not even be able to ask a parent opt out of transportation. You always have that, your child is always eligible for transportation. Even if you say, no, I'm driving my child every day, you still have the option to ride a bus at any time.
Thank you. If the classroom desks at the secondary level are not being cleaned in between classes, can students be instructed to grab the bottle, spray some on paper towel on the way in, and wipe down their own desk before taking their seat?
Well, they cannot be instructed. It specifically says in the guidance from the State Education Department that students cannot be made to be part of the cleaning and disinfecting process. So we can't instruct them to. However, there will be a spray bottle in every classroom. And if a student would like to take that, spray their desk and wipe it off, they can. The teacher can spray all the desks and kids wipe it off. That's okay too. And we're getting clarification on this next point to make sure that we can do this. That if somebody wanted to send their child in with a Ziploc bag with Clorox wipes or Lysol wipes or something and wipe down the desks themselves, that would be okay too. We're okay with that. We're getting clarification that that's not the bit in the reopening guidance where it said student cannot be made to be part of the cleaning and disinfecting. I don't believe that means you're not allowed to bring in a Clorox wipe, but we're getting clarification on that. And then in addition to that, I brought something to show and tell. These are the desktop barriers that we're getting. And what we're thinking for, for elementary schools, what we're thinking is that these would just be on each child's desk and they would stay there. They're very light, they're thin, you see they're flexible, and they can stay there. And what I did with this one yesterday is we sprayed the disinfectant on it and just let it dry. Didn't even wipe it, and it dried clear. And what we're thinking at the secondary schools, at first we were saying, well, maybe it'd be mandatory for all kids to carry this around every day. Maybe that's not going to work. Some students will not want to, some parents will not want their students to want to, and then the logistics of, well, I forgot mine. That might not work so well. So what we're thinking now is if we made it optional at the second, now one thing it would make better suited for mask breaks in a room behind this for a few minutes. And then the other is at the secondary school, optional. Then if you'd be more comfortable, you could have your child just bring it in with them and put it down, and then that's the desktop. And they carry around their own desktop each class to class. And just little feet on here that come off. So if nobody wanted to set it up right. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Sort of on the same bend, has there been any consideration to have assigned seats at the secondary level to help with contact tracing? And also, why not attach the desk shields at the secondary level?
Okay, so I'll take the first one first. And I think as human beings, we normally always tend to sit in the same seats. I think we always choose that. So doing that probably would be a great idea. And I don't think that we would have any problem instituting that where students would sit in their same assigned seats at the secondary level. We can definitely make that happen. With regard to making these stationary, the only problem is that different students are sitting at the different desks. And so the shields are really specific to the individual students, and students would then have to wipe these down, or they would have to be wiped down for each individual in between classes. So we think that it makes better sense to not have the same shield for different students, which is why they would be stationary at the elementary level, but not stationary at the secondary level. And again, as Mr. Carlson pointed out, we will make these optional for students, but if a student wanted to lay this down flat, they could easily write on this, and this may be very comfortable for them and a way of providing an additional source of protection. And I know, if I may, so just mention this, some parents have asked why all these, shields, the mask, and all that. These redundant measures that we're trying to put in place is really to start in a very conservative manner, because we believe that it's important, especially as we're reopening schools, to come out with the most conservative, healthy, and safety protocols that are possible. We will continue to re-examine all of these protocols that we're putting in place based on rates of transmission, based on the data, based on science.
Thank you. And I know Mr. Carlson just mentioned that we need a little clarification on this next point, but if children are allowed to bring their own wipes, how will you ensure that they don't contain allergens like certain extracts or scents that might trigger an allergic reaction in students who come to that desk later in the day? And this would obviously be if you don't have assigned seats.
Yeah, we will have to take that into consideration. We will address that. And I would say at this point, I don't have an answer to that question, so we will have to research that and get back to you.
Thank you. Do you have enough qualified substitute teachers to fill in if a lot of staff are not able to work? Will they be vetted in the same way as you would normally do for a leave replacement? Will they be offered professional development with the new technologies? Will they get health and safety training?
They do. So a couple of points. Everyone is going to get the same health and safety training. Our goal is to provide the appropriate number of people prior to school starting. We're in the process of doing that and filling in any gaps that we have. Those employees that applied for a job, for example, but there may not be one for them because they didn't make it through the process, we're still vetting them and asking if they want to be substitute teachers for us. The mentors will be working closely with everyone. So regardless of if they are first year at Three Village or a first year teacher, they're still going to have the same mentoring experience, same background checks, same everything. Nothing has changed with that at all.
Thank you. If our fourth grader is exposed to COVID in his class, obviously he'll stay home and quarantine. This means our first grader does as well. But what about our first graders' classmates and teacher? Will they be made aware? Wouldn't they need to quarantine as well?
They would not need to quarantine. When the Department of Health starts their contact tracing, they will be looking for people who are considered close contacts. So that means that they are less than 6 feet away from someone for more than 10 minutes. The sibling, the first grader, would need to quarantine or isolate, but unless the first grader's classmates were around the individual who tested positive in a space closer than 6 feet for more than 10 minutes, they would not need to quarantine.
Thank you. If an elementary family chooses the remote learning option, but then school ends up closing, will students revert to their original home classroom?
They would not, because that would be that would disrupt the continuity of education for that child, because they're already assigned to a teacher. So that means they would then have a different teacher assigned to them at the elementary level. So no, we would keep them with that same teacher to provide continuity of instruction.
Thank you. What will the early childhood classrooms, i.e. the pre-K through first grade, look like? Will there be opportunities for cooperative play? If so, what measures are being taken to keep the kids safe? Will there be any toys in the classroom? How will they be cleaned and sanitized in between each use?
So they will be sanitized in the same manner. Are we talking about the classrooms or the actual toys themselves?
I think they were asking about any manipulatives, any toys that are in the classroom. How would they be cleaned between children?
Classrooms, anybody who's seen our pre-K classrooms, they were generally small tables where multiple children would sit at the table. We have removed those tables from the pre-kindergarten rooms, and we are having individual small-sized desks for those children to create 6 feet of separation for them. Natalie Lillibois, who oversees our pre-kindergarten program, along with our pre-kindergarten teachers, have been meeting to determine that each child will have their own little box of manipulatives and toys that will be separate for them in a little bin that they will keep at their desk. So when the second group of students come in, those bins will be removed, and the bins for the PM students will be placed on the desk. the desk will be wiped down in between. So in terms of cooperative play, our teachers are very creative and they will come up for ways that students can do that by social distancing. It will not look the same as it has in the past, just the way it would not look the same for any of our students. But we will find ways for the students to interact productively, but in a safe manner. And so they'll have their own supplies, individual supplies at the pre-K level.
Thank you. If we choose the in-person plan for our children, then opt to move to remote learning, must we abide by the rule that the student cannot go back to in-person learning until the second or third trimester at the elementary level or the second trimester at the secondary level?
That is correct. And that's to keep groupings together and also to make sure that we have adequate space within the building to accommodate those students, especially at the elementary level, as we're trying to keep everyone as separate as we possibly can.
Thank you. Some sport and music equipment is simply too heavy or cumbersome to be carried around all day. If we're not using lockers, what will kids do with these items during the school day?
The music lockers in the music classrooms, particularly those for orchestra and band, will be available. Those are open lockers. They have a cage on them, so they will be available for storage. We'll speak with Mr. Finnerty about the larger items, but I'm trying to understand which items those would be. So I'll leave that question up and we'll have to answer that at a later date.
Thank you. How will there be equity in the tests and exams that the virtual learners complete compared with the students attending in person? Students at home have access to other devices to look up answers or check notes. Would you consider leveling the field by allowing the in-person students to take exams in a similar open book format?
Well, the idea of open book is not necessarily the best idea in education either. So you have to be careful with what we're requesting here. We are have been developing and doing professional development with teachers on systems such as Go Guardian, as I explained the other night on the forum. That allows for the ability for teachers to provide assessments online as well. The assessments need to be adjusted to be more formative than simply rote memory questions that are given out. And that way we can try to follow what's going along. The Go Guardian system, as well as some features in Google Meet, teacher can obviously see how long it's taking a student to answer a particular question in some of our online assessment programs. So that means that the teachers need to be on top of watching what's going on with the classes. If students taking an inordinate amount of time with one particular question, then it needs to be addressed at some point in time. So that's basically how we're trying to do it. This is not something that's just unique to us. It's every school district, even colleges having the same issue. So we're trying to do the training and professional development that is necessary to make sure teachers have that capability in all classrooms.
Thank you. How will you assure that students are getting into the correct cars at pickup time with the right parent or guardian?
We will have at every school a number of security staff as well as building monitors outside to make sure that it goes as smoothly as possible. Of course, as you know, the first week of school is always there are bugs to be worked out, and this year will probably be more than usual. So it's going to take a few days at least to really get a good routine going for both drop off and pick up in the afternoon. So, but we will have all hands on deck to help make that go as smoothly as possible.
Thank you. How will the community compact be enforced? Will it be mandatory?
Yeah, sorry. So the community compact will be part of, let me just go back. So parents in the past have, and students have signed our code of conduct. And we would be asking parents on behalf of their children and all of our staff to sign this document, electronically sign this document as well. And if someone didn't sign it by the time school were to begin, we would be contacting them, asking them to please commit to this. As I had mentioned at the forum on Wednesday, there is an interdependence between all of us. We have a responsibility to one another to be for the health and safety of ourselves and each other. And it is only by working together to do that and collaboratively that we can accomplish what we need to in our community.
Thank you. What is the maximum number of students and desks that can fit 6 feet apart in the various classrooms? Is it possible for us to see photos of the different classrooms to observe distancing between desks, how the shields fit in, etc.?
Yes, we will be showing pictures of that in the FAQs. As you know, we're updating the FAQs regularly. You probably have seen the expanded version and more detailed version of our FAQs. So that those pictures will be shown. In terms of a secondary classroom, I had mentioned at the elementary level, the smallest classroom can have about 18 to 20 desks, the largest classroom 23. At the secondary level, the largest classroom, a typical classroom, a standard classroom, standard classroom is 18 desks, would be 18 desks. And that's why we are looking to lower our class size at the secondary level. However, we have other larger venues at our secondary buildings. At the high school, we have an LGI, which is the large group instruction room. We will be utilizing that all 9 periods so that we can provide greater distancing. We have auditoriums, and we will be repurposing any cafeteria spaces or mini gyms that we need to make sure that we can utilize that space effectively and social distance.
Thank you. Back to the trifolds for a moment. What are the trifolds made of? They are not described in the FAQs. How heavy are they? Are they optional, mandatory, or only mandatory conditionally, such as during mask breaks? Will the teachers have shields as well?
Well, they weigh about 40 pounds each. They're very light. I don't know, they're flexible, very light. They're made from a product that's it's known as PETG, which is a glycol modified version of polyethylene, if I pronounce the next word correctly, terephthalate. So PETG. And it's approved by New York State Education Department Office of Facilities Planning and New York State Fire Code. Plexiglass, for instance, does not. That is not fire rated for use. This is a product specifically made to conform to our requirements, meaning New York State Education Department. As we said a little earlier, our thinking now is optional for secondary school students. And also, if they choose, lay it on the desktop. That way it takes care of the, was the desktop disinfected to their satisfaction prior to them sitting there. The teachers won't have shields, although as we go on, if it looks like something might work for that, we would certainly be willing to take a look at that and see. I'm not sure if there was another part to the question that I didn't address.
I think you got it. Thank you. Will students wear masks for PE?
If the students are outside and the activities will allow them to be socially distanced, no, they will not. However, if they are in an enclosed environment and we are not adequately able to socially distance, and I'm saying well beyond 6 feet, then yes, they would need to wear masks.
Thank you. Vomiting happens, especially in elementary schools. When a child vomits, will the whole class be sent home?
Unfortunately, there are illnesses and that will take place. No, a student would not be sent home just for vomiting. As Cheryl mentioned, there will be 2 registered nurses in each building, 3 at the high school. They will determine whether a student has symptoms that are similar to COVID, and it might indicate that. The child might be just sick enough that he needs to go home, but it might not be related to COVID. So the nurse will make that determination.
Thank you. Did teachers use the summer to rewrite all of their lesson plans to be delivered effectively in a virtual format? So much nuance can be lost on the virtual learners if it's not planned for.
I really can't comment on what the teachers use the summer for. That's not part of my piece of this. But we provided curriculum writing projects in all areas for all of our subjects that requested it. Teachers write lessons. Curriculum is created by the district, and the state comes up with standards. So there is a variation between each of these things. Training, again, has been going on since March on how to do your lessons in a virtual format. All the preparations we are making currently is to ensure that we are, at some point, may be on a virtual model completely, regardless of everything that's going on right now. So our planning is the worst case scenario with it's all being out. And the adaptations will have to be made as we move into in-person and have some students on remote at the same time.
Thank you. Will there be driver's ed?
Unfortunately, at this point, there will not be driver's education. We had sought clarification, and the only group that is being allowed to do the, I guess I would call it a truncated 5-hour course, are the actual schools themselves, the driver education schools. They are not being offered at the school level at this time.
Thank you. If a teacher is showing COVID symptoms and is sent home, will the students have a sub for the rest of the day, or will they also be sent home?
In trying to address these issues with an abundance of caution, we would of course consult with our chief medical officer, but I think the school's inclination, the district's inclination would be to send those children home. And we would make sure that we have enough time to contact the parents and provide for any kind of substitute in that classroom, but we would be looking to send the children home.
Thank you. If an elementary parent opts for remote instruction after their student started the year in person, will the student be switched from their regular teacher to the remote teacher? Is there any chance the elementary teachers could offer virtual learning from their home classrooms?
Okay, so if, just so I understand, if an elementary school child was in a remote instruction after the start of the school year, and then they want to go in person, is that correct? I'm trying to follow the question. Sorry.
Let me look at it again. So they're starting remotely, then they join the classroom. Would they be switched from their regular teacher to the remote teacher?
Oh.
And then the part two was, is there any chance that the elementary teachers would offer virtual learning from their home classrooms?
Okay, so that would be no. So if a child starts in a remote classroom at the elementary level, and then the parent at the second trimester decides to move the child into a in-person program, that child would be with a different teacher in their home school.
Okay, thank you. Regarding the district's plan of hiring extra teachers, what about hiring TAs to monitor the chat window while the teacher is talking to remote students?
As we described the other evening in the forum, the ability for the teacher to monitor the chat will be available with the device in their hand. As we try to demonstrate, if everyone can see that, how the device folds under with the keyboard, and teacher can walk around and monitor. We're not hiring extra TAs to do that task at this particular point in time. That with the numbers of students in the classroom, there should be an ability for a teacher to be able to do both while walking around the room, hopefully not too much around the room, and addressing those issues.
Thank you. How many hours of professional development have the Three Village teachers taken to prepare for the upcoming school year? Can you give us examples of some of the PD courses?
Certainly. So we offered close to 90 different courses in the professional development setting in the spring, and that continued through the summer. We had 1,500 attendees. That means that 1,500 people attended those things. We obviously have only about 100 and some odd teachers and 300 and some odd TAs, so they attended multiple sessions. So most of those sessions were in the form of preparation for the virtual model. So we offered courses in things like Go Guardian, everything in the G Suite platform, from Google Meet, all the different components of the Google platform availability, and a host of other programs that we have because of the resources we have at each of the levels We have invested a lot of money over the past several years on providing more online accessible resources rather than textbooks. And by moving to the online model, it has benefited us now that we've done that, so those things can be accessible. Many of those companies have been offering training, and we've been attending those. We've also worked with Eastern Suffolk BOCES, who offers a number of workshops. Basically, we have also put a lot of things into videos so that we have teachers can go on their own and just tap them and review them. Just the same as if you were on at home and going to YouTube and looking at some of those things. And very honestly, some of the concerns from the last meeting that came up about parents having that piece. We're working on a parent university piece, and some of those same videos may be accessible for parents to look at and be able to tap if they have concerns or things they want to be trained on as well.
Thank you. If a family has to quarantine 2 weeks because of possible exposure, do they go right into virtual learning, and will they return back to their in-person classes after the 14 days?
Okay, so at the secondary level, they would immediately go right into remote learning. At the elementary level, we would probably look if we were to put them in remote learning, they would be joining a class that is not the class to which they are assigned. So we would be working with families to provide home tutoring for those students who would be quarantined at the elementary level during that period of time, with supplements, of course. And so just in terms of continuity is so important, we could look to place that child at the elementary level into another remote class, but they may not be at the same point where the other children are, which would be a concern.
Thank you. If the kids all go outside for a recess or for a class, who will determine the 6-foot distances? Will the teachers have to measure them off, or will they be pre-marked?
There will be pre-marking, but also we will have our monitors assigned to each class to make sure that social distancing is happening with the children. There'll be additional staff to do that.
How many positive cases would need to be reported for the school to go on full remote learning? Would that be a school-by-school decision or a district-wide decision?
I think it really will depend on the situation, and we would be consulting with the Department of Health, with our Chief Medical Officer, and in some cases, as we know what happens in the spring, even though our district made the decision initially to go out for a period of time, that decision was followed by at the Suffolk County level and then at the governor's level. So I think it will be a combination of collaborating with our Department of Health, with our Chief Medical Officer before making that determination.
Thank you. Will parents be permitted into the classrooms during the school day for celebrations, etc.?
I am sad to say that no, we would not be allowing that at this time. We will, of course, continue to look at that as we go through. We will reevaluate that decision, but not at this particular time.
Is there an average, if there is an average, as you say, of 18 students per classroom at the elementary level, what happens with an anomaly? In other words, if one school has 4 sections of a grade with 24 kids per class and another school has 10 per class and they're 4 sections of the same grade, would students ever be moved to another building?
We would never move students to another building unless a parent specifically asks for that. We do have children that are attending different schools outside of their neighborhood catchment areas. However, we would be looking at a way to balance those classes and adding staff as needed.
Thank you. If a student attending in person contracts COVID or multi-system inflammatory disease, will they be moved right into remote learning, or will they be offered the 1 hour of daily home tutoring typically offered to homebound students?
We would attempt to place that child in if we're talking about elementary, yes. So at the elementary level, it becomes more complicated, as I said, because those students on remote learning are assigned a specific teacher. So we would work with the family to make that determination. And there may be children who are too ill to receive remote instruction, and therefore home tutoring may be a better option. So we would be working with the families to make that determination.
Thank you. What social and emotional experiences can take place for students since they aren't allowed to be near each other?
Well, social and emotional experiences, if we're talking about clubs and other kinds of activities, if students are in a classroom, there's going to be interaction that is occurring within that classroom setting. We are offering all of our clubs, and students who are at home will be able to participate remotely. Our social workers, our psychologists, our guidance counselors will be working with students, and they will have an opportunity to have connection with them whether they are in school or whether they are home. So social and emotional programs are also instituted, or I'm going to say integrated into the curriculum at different levels, that students will have those opportunities.
Thank you. What type of alcohol will the hand cleanser contain? Ethyl, isopropyl?
Basically, we have two types. We have a lot of Purell dispensers all of our buildings, and Purell contains ethyl alcohol. And the official New York State hand sanitizer that we've been getting from New York State contains isopropyl alcohol.
Thank you. If a student has a medical counterindication for the masks, what type of documentation would be required, and who will decide whether the exception is approved?
It would be a medical documentation from a medical professional, and that information would come to the school. We will accept, if it is a recent medical documentation from a medical professional, it will be accepted. The district will not be questioning a medical professional.
Thank you. Please define deep cleaning.
Every night after school, our custodial staff will be using a product called Virex. It's Virex 256. And by the way, all cleaning products that we use for these purposes are on the EPA, what's known as List N, which is products that are approved by the EPA to kill the coronavirus. So Virex is one of those products, and that's what we'll be using at night. The product that we'll be using during the day when kids are in school, neither one is dangerous, which is why it's on that list. But the one takes the product during the day is called Oxivir, made by the same company. It's also on that list then. But that only needs to stay on for 1 minute. It's a 1 minute drying time. The Virex is a 10-minute drying time. That's why that's used after school at night. And we have fogger type applicators. And what it does is custodian will go into a room with the fogger, and it gets everything, all area, the walls, the ceiling, if there's anything on the counter, everything in the room gets covered with this, the Virex overnight, and it dries. And by the way, just out of curiosity, I took this desktop barrier yesterday and we sprayed Virex on it and just let it dry, and it dried clear. So it's not like there's a film on it after being sprayed. So that's what we mean by deep cleaning. The Virex at night, every night, with a fogger type applicator that gets everywhere.
All right, thank you. So that's the last of our pre-submitted questions. We do have time to take a few from the chat, or we can try to take them live. Bear with me for a second. Before we do that, is there anything else the cabinet wanted to speak to before we go to additional questions?
We're fine.
Okay, so Michael Wilking, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, thank you. So I think one of the things that people are probably worried about, given outbreaks that have happened at other schools that have opened so far, is just a little bit more detail about the contact tracing procedure. So I think it was stated that it would take 24 hours for the contact tracing to take place. And of course, you know, as we've seen with testing, this may get delayed further if rates start to grow. And so, so this means that even in the optimistic scenario, all the exposed students in the same class will be sent back to school for at least one more day. So I was wondering if it was possible for the district to implement an additional minimal protocol to at least inform the students that an infected student in their class exists without identifying that student, so that they can begin virtual learning and not return to school the next day.
So we recognize that if there is an outbreak, that the Department of Health might have difficulty keeping up with the tracing. The difficult position that we are put in as a district, though, is that we have the right to protect the privacy of those who have tested positive. So we would take advice from, we do rely heavily on our chief medical officer for his recommendations. And I think in that case, we would have to rely on him. It would depend on the severity of the symptoms and exactly what that illness looks like.
Okay, but I guess the procedure will allow for at least one more day of those students attending school, you know, in the optimistic scenario of 24 hours.
Well, I will contact the Department of Health once I know that someone has tested positive. If the Department of Health says right there, go ahead and quarantine the entire class or keep the whole class at home, then we would do that. But our first step is to contact the Department of Health, and we do rely on that because that is their responsibility, and their job is to conduct that contact tracing.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Kathleen, forgive me if I'm butchering your name. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes, thank you so much. So I had a question about the hybrid option. I understand from the last forum that this is an option that was fully discussed and vetted by the task force that put together the plan and was discarded for a number of reasons. And yet in the new registration form, we're being asked to weigh in on whether we would still be interested in a hybrid form. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about, if that's a choice that we're going to be making, how are you currently envisioning what hybrid means in contrast to the in-person and the remote versions? You had mentioned that you're still trying to do cohorts. Would hybrid students be part of the in-person cohorts? Would they be a separate cohort? Are you talking about things that would be alternate days, or what's sort of the thinking behind that? Because it's hard to express interest in a plan without some of those details.
So with regard to the district looking at a hybrid plan, we did look at multiple models. We looked at models that would be one week, out the other week, in 2 days, have Wednesday where the teacher wouldn't have any contact with the students except remotely, and then there was a Friday another group. And we looked at a multiple of models with hybrid. And as you heard me speak on Wednesday, with regard to elementary, there were some serious concerns with regard to childcare. Our survey had clearly indicated that 48% of our population at that level had concerns about childcare. And because in the document that we received from the State Education Department, and because of logistics in terms of being able to provide childcare within our buildings, we would not be able to do that. So that was a serious concern elementary wise, plus the fact that our elementary school sizes are rather small in nature, and we can separate the students by 6 feet, and the cohorts would stay together. We didn't really think of the hybrid as a possible model there. There were also concerns at the secondary level with inconsistency with student continuity of education, and as well as mental health issues. So if the reason we put out the survey was our governor also was very clear, not this Monday, but the Monday prior, in saying to school communities and to parents, you really need to reach out to your schools and tell them what you're looking for. What is it that you desire in a plan? And we felt that also we had received a lot of feedback after we released our plan on the 31st of July. Parents had come back and said, what about a hybrid model? So in being responsive to our school community, we decided that in the survey, we should be asking parents about the hybrid. We are collecting that data right now, and we will use that data to make a determination to whether we would have a hybrid plan. I will say if a hybrid plan were to be offered, and I'll look at the secondary level right now, I would not be recommending a week on or a week off, because I think that there's too many gaps in terms of continuity of education. Our teachers feel that way, our administrators feel that way, and we believe that at that level, it would have to be at least 1 day in or 2 days in and 2 other days. We would not be looking at a week on or a week off, but that would be determined based on the data that we're getting back. We are looking at that information very carefully, and we are trying to be very responsive to our parent community. Does that help?
Just as it does, and just as a quick follow-up, I mean, because again, I feel like I'm expressing an opinion with the form, but I also seem to be making a selection that's going to be attached to my child for next semester. And so I guess I have thoughts about a hybrid plan that I think would work for my son, and I have thoughts about a hybrid plan that wouldn't. And so it's sort of hard to know. It sort of feels like two separate things of what would I opt in for versus what is my opinion on hybrid. Does that make sense?
Help with that. So we're asking parents as best they can to make a selection by August 21st. But we realize that after we look at all of that data and the district says, okay, this is the definitive plan, parents may have other questions, and they may say to us, that's not really what I want from my child, and I would like to switch. I would like to either have a full remote, because at this point, I want to make it very clear to our school community, we are offering a fully remote program. That is unequivocal. So any parent who has that desire, that we will be fulfilling that for them. However, if a parent says, you know what, I really am not comfortable with, let's say we do decide to go with a hybrid plan, and I'm not saying we are, but let's say that, and I don't really like the way that looks, but I want this instead, then we would allow the parent to switch to a remote plan. But at this point, I will say that the way the data is coming in, and again, data could change at the elementary level, it is strongly indicating that parents are either looking for a remote plan or they are looking for their children to be in school 5 days a week.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Unander, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, thank you. It's a sort of a 3-part-ish, but all with remote learning. My question is, and I know you addressed it a little bit, but not with a particular number, if the amount of families that opt out for remote learning, this is the elementary level, my daughter's going into 1st grade, is there a maximum number for a remote class, kind of teacher to student ratio? And then the 2 follow-ups were also for the elementary level. With it being, live interactive learning, are parents expected to sort of kind of be on hand, or are the students more going to be one-on-one with the teacher? And in terms of the teacher, it's currently going to be a teacher that is teaching one of the, in a classroom teacher in that grade setting in one of the elementary schools, or has that not yet been decided?
Okay, so that's a 3-part question there.
Yes.
So I'm going to start with the first part of your question. And is there a magic number with regard to the number of students who would be in a remote learning model? So we have district guidelines that are both contractual and district in terms of how many students are in a classroom. So for the primary grades, it's generally 23, and then it goes to 25, and then it goes to 26. Of course, you don't see those kind of numbers in our school district at all. But in a remote setting, we probably would set a parameter around a number of 25 at the maximum that I would want to see in an elementary classroom remotely. Plus, we do have teachers who also are immunocompromised who may not be able to teach, and other support staff who are immunocompromised who may not be able to be in a school building. And therefore, we would utilize in a classroom setting such as that, additional support staff to help the teacher with the students. So if a student, if let's say a classroom had 25 students, we might be using a teaching assistant or an, other support staff to help guide those classrooms that are happening remotely. You are not going to see a classroom of 30 students with one teacher in Three Village, even remotely. That would be unacceptable to any of us on an educational level. So I'm going to let Mr. Scanlon handle the second part of your question.
Thank you.
Could you repeat the second part of the question?
Sure. It said, with a first grader in my particular instance, in terms of if we did remote and we're staying home, what sort of commitment in terms of, do you want parents to be in the room but not on screen, there to help, or kind of how much, a little bit depends probably on your child of independent learning, but how much optionally, would you want to have, parents available to assist with their learning at home while they're in the live remote sessions?
Right, and I think whereas a remote session itself, the idea of, like you said, dividing it between the primary and the intermediate. Certainly older children, 3 through 6, can probably handle more independence with the teacher than perhaps a younger child. And honestly, the parent support there really has to be on an individual basis, what you feel your child needs assistance with. That's why it's imperative that we get the information as quickly as possible so we can create the schedule and get it out to you so you can see when your classroom teacher will be on, when the services will be on, and when the specials will be on. We are not looking to have any child at any level on screen full time, constantly throughout the entire day. Obviously, in the secondary level, there are breaks for lunch, and we're even including the breaks between passing periods in the remote schedule if we go full remote, so that students can have the ability to take a break for a little while in between some of the classes. In the elementary level in particular, we're also doing some asynchronous pieces more towards the latter part of the day, and there will be some independent work. So we don't want to have students constantly on the screen. Again, the younger the students, you're going to see probably a lot more of this type of interaction face to face than you may completely at the intermediate level and even the high school level. As I tried to demonstrate, and I think we'll do a demonstration of this on Tuesday evening at the next forum at that night, try to show you what an example of Go Guardian, what that would look like at each of the levels for an elementary child, for a junior high school student, and for a high school student, so that parents have a better idea. So at least you're making an informed decision as you're seeing what the options are.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful.
Thank you. And just a reminder, if you have a question and you want to ask it live, that's great. Go for it. Just use that little hand up so I know you're waiting. Francis and DiPietro, would you like to ask your question? All right, we may have lost her.
Yes, I would. Yes, I would. I just couldn't get off mute.
That's okay. Welcome.
So I really appreciate, first of all, and I'm thankful for all the hard work everybody is doing. I would really like some clarity about what a hybrid plan would entail and what it would look like. Because when trying to make a decision, I cannot make an informed decision without knowing that. It appears to me by common sense that that would reduce the viral load and the amount of students. But putting that aside for a moment, one, can you have a hybrid plan in the secondary school, but not the elementary school? Two, what would the hybrid plan be that when they are doing their remote learning days, they are synchronized with the class? And I guess those are the two questions I have at the moment. And a third is, how does it present a mental health issue with the hybrid plan? I guess those are my three immediate questions.
Let's look at the first question. So I'm going to take the question that's just clear on my mind right now. You had asked, could we do a hybrid model at one level and not at the other? The answer to that question is yes, absolutely. Okay. So if you think about it in a sense, right now our students at the secondary level who are learning remotely, and there are parents who have expressed that regardless of whether we do a hybrid or a full-in plan, they want their children taught remotely. They want a full remote plan. So if you can conceptualize this, in a sense, we are doing a hybrid plan. because the students at the secondary level are following their schedule. So the teacher is in the classroom and they have students in front of them, but they also have a group of students who are learning at home. So those students learning at home are part of that same class. They are all learning together. And it is possible that a teacher during that lesson may pair a student at home with a student in the classroom to work on a particular assignment or work on a particular, let's say, activity. So if you think about it, in a sense, we are doing a hybrid plan with students being full in. So in a hybrid plan that would be physically hybrid for both, you would be dividing pretty much the class in half. So if you had a class, I'm just going to use this, of 20, 10 would be in the classroom at home on certain days, learning along with the 10 that are in the classroom setting, and then it would switch. So that is pretty much how it would look, not much different in a sense from those students who are learning remotely at home with their peers that are in the classroom. With regard to social and emotional support, our counselors, our psychologists, our social workers are available to students whether they are in school or they're not. They would be conducting Google Meets with those students. They would be using telephone, email to address any of their needs. And all of the contacts that would happen with parents, any kind of meeting with parents could happen during video conferencing and those kinds of things. So any of our students that are part of our student body have access to counselors, whether they are in school or they're not.
I do have one more question. I'm sorry. If you, I think you answered it, but my apologies if I missed it. If you choose the hybrid and then it is not offered after the survey, do you get to then choose between remote and in school?
Yes, you do.
Okay. And one last question concerning it. What are the concerns that you have with the hybrid model? Because it seems to be that it really isn't a focus.
Well, one of the concerns we have, as I mentioned at the elementary level, it is childcare. That is a major concern for us. It is also continuity of instruction for students. And the continuity of instruction for students, also to a degree of students being at home alone. Some parents have expressed concern about that. And we did have a lot of issues come up regarding student mental health of being separated even at any point from their peers. And we believe that by lowering class size and addressing all of the safety protocols that we will be able to put in place a full 5-day program. However, we are looking at all of the data and we are being responsive to what the feedback that we are receiving.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to give you one now from the chat. If I decide to have my kids driven and picked up from school, will there be large numbers of children all waiting in crowded areas to be picked up? What will be the drop-off and pickup procedure?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because our building principals right now are creating videos to actually show what that will all look like. And those videos will be posted to the district website.
Great, thank you. Okay, somebody who's up there, Cax, would you like to ask your question? K-A-X?
Yes, hi, thank you. I have a first grader, and my concern with my first grader is, you know, she obviously needs a pencil and paper practice. Can we be provided, if we select remote, can we be provided with the Go Math, the Wordly Wise books, and also any worksheets that they might use in the classroom? Because certainly she's not good with the keyboard yet, and she definitely needs the practice with writing.
The answer is yes. We would provide those resources for you as well. The students will have those that availability. The piece with the Chromebooks for everyone, just to understand, we're distributing them to all the students. Again, secondary is going to have them. 7th grade will be getting them as they come in. And the elementary will be distributing them. Those parents that wish to go to the remote model prior to the start of school will be getting their devices. But at school, and even in the in-person and in the remote piece, the teachers will be providing some type of training as we were doing the training with the teachers, training to the students on what the expectations would be on how to use the devices. So it's not going to be we just do the device and we leave you alone. We're going to be helping the children going through this so that there is an understanding how to use it. Certainly, that our devices have the screen ability, the touch screen capability, as well as the keyboard. That was an added expense, but we did that because we knew that that would be something, especially at the younger ages, that is desirable. We have several students at the secondary level that use that more than probably use the mouse as well. It's all whatever their comfort level is. But as far as giving you materials, that is not a problem. We can certainly give you hard copy material of those particular things. And then the resources, though, if you're in a complete remote model, though, would have to be through that teacher with an online piece. So I don't want to say that we can't give you things printed out that way, but we'd have to work on a system to work out getting those to you at a later time.
And my other question, thank you for that. My other question is, if I go into the survey now for the August 21st deadline and I put in remote, fully remote, and then later you guys put the results together, and I'm hoping we'll get transparency of those results. For example, knowing what the class sizes are of the in-person, am I allowed to change my mind knowing that, let's say the class size for my first grader is 5 students, or for my sixth grader is 8 students? If that information is made available to us, can we change our mind from remote to in-person before the start of school?
You will definitely be able to change your mind before the start. And here's the information I just want to share. So if, let's say, we have a class by the time everybody makes their selection, and again, some families feel very, very strongly, and we respect that about the construction plan. And we tell you that there are 12 students or 10 students in your child's class. And the school year starts and we get new enrollees, and we have to place those students. Those numbers could be fluid. So I do just want to mention that too.
Thank you.
And I just have one last question. I know some families will get doctor's notes so that their child doesn't have to wear masks in the classroom. Will parents be notified that, in Mrs. Hawkins' class, there are 4 non-mask wearers? Will we be notified that?
No, that would be an invasion of privacy. We would not be notifying any parents about other medical issues that students have.
Oh, no, not the medical issues, just the fact that there's this 2 non-mask wearers versus 4.
I would really need to check that with legal counsel as to whether that information could be shared or not.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to, if it's okay, ask you guys to please put all of the questions with the hand up now. It's hard. I don't have the mental dexterity to manage the chat and the hands up. So let's go with all hands up if you have a question to ask, if you don't mind. I apologize to those of you who've been typing in the chat. It's just it's a little challenging to keep up. Jillian Mazer, would you like to ask your question, please?
Hi, yes, thank you. So my question actually is around pre-K and the plan that will happen with pre-K. Will they follow the same mask rules? Will they eat in the cafeteria the way other grades will, or will there be any differences in the process and that's been laid out thus far?
The pre-K students will eat in their classroom. We will not be bringing them to the cafeteria this year. That is because we have to stagger the cafeteria use for the K through 6 students. So the pre-Ks will remain in their classroom. And also with regard to our pre-K students, they will be asked to wear the mask. We will give frequent mask breaks for the children. We will bring them outside as much as we possibly can so that they can have fresh air, especially weather permitting.
Great. And will there be differences with the pickup and drop off? My understanding is that we were supposed to bring them into the classrooms, but I'm not sure if that's happening.
We will have boarding their children to the desk where a security guard will meet you. Yeah, we will not, parents will escort their children right up until the area in which they will enter the building.
Okay, and will some of this information be, or will any of this information be given to us like in an orientation beforehand?
Yes, in fact, that's the elementary principals along with other parent principals are creating a dismissal and arrival schedule, and we have included pre-K as part of that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Brenda Z, would you like to ask your question, please?
Hi, good morning. I actually have 3 questions. My first question is, in general, all of our 10th and 11th graders take the PSAT in the fall semester. So is that still in schedule? If so, what will be the arrangement for the students taking the online lessons? Do they need to go back to school to take the test?
If the College Board is providing for online PSAT, the students would not need to come to school. That would be determined by the College Board. And with regard to the PSAT, in school, we will be offering that unless we are told that we can't. And information regarding that will be forthcoming from the guidance department at Ward Melville High School.
Thank you. And also for the secondary school students choosing the online lessons, how can they pick up the textbooks from school? Will it be mailed, or we need to go to school to pick it up?
I'm going to let Mr. Scanlon answer that question for you.
Thank you.
The majority, again, of our textbooks are online, so there may not be a necessity for you to pick up the books. The only exception to that would be the AP books, which by the contract with those companies and the printing rights, many of them, they will not allow us to have on an online version. The particular departments will make the arrangements for the pickup of those books when the school year starts. So the teachers and the chair people and the directors will be in contact with the individual students who are on remote to pick up those particular books. But the majority of our resources are online already, so there's no necessity to have that if you're on remote for some of those other classes.
All right. My last question is, so will our teachers wear a microphone or any other type of equipment when they're teaching? So it can improve the sound quality for the benefit of the online students.
So as I demonstrated the other evening at the forum, the devices would be in the hand of the teacher, would be stationary on the desk unless the teacher put it down. But our teachers are trained. The devices we're using, the Chromebooks are the same Chromebooks that students are getting, have a built-in microphone. Within 8 to 10 feet of that device, we tested this in classroom. So if people are having reactions to that, it's being tested. However, there are some staff members who are referred to as low talkers, whether they're in person or not. We've purchased microphones and we've been giving those out. Some of them want their own individual ones, although they would have their own individual one with the one we would buy them without making them share them among any other staff member. Can be attached to the device and they can have that headset.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, Rick, would you like to ask your question? And if everybody else could please.
디펜던스 없으니까 아무것도 쓸 필요 없잖아요.
예. 뭐 리포트 섹션도
그냥 그 다 썼으면 그냥 놔둬요.
Rick, would you like to ask your question? All right, how about Heather Pickler?
Hi, yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Hello?
Hi,
Sorry.
yes, so oh wait, are you talking to me or Rick now?
So yeah, we had the mute thing, sorry. I can go after you, or do you want me to go first?
I can go, and then if you want to go after me, that'd be great.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I think you have to shut off your mute thing while I go. Okay, so you can hear me? I can do my question now?
Yeah.
Okay, great, perfect. So, I mean, it's sort of part of this point is sort of irrelevant at this point, but moving forward, there might be some thought. I feel like as I'm watching all the questions come up in the chat, I feel like elementary is so completely different than what we're thinking of for secondary. And there might be some thought moving forward to have some discussions of those things happening as separate entities. Because even when we're talking about a hybrid model, I think everyone, and I agree, one of the quickest reasons that we walked away from a hybrid at the elementary level was that childcare is such a serious issue because of the number of families that have dual working parents. But that is, and that those kids could not be left there alone, but that is not true at all at the secondary level. And so, and we also seem to not have any problem at the elementary level of social distancing because of the size of our classrooms. And it appears that the concern that keeps getting raised in the meeting the other day, as well as today, is that it is really going to be a challenge, even with all these attempts and plans that are in place, to socially distance at both the junior highs and the high schools because of the volume of kids that enter this building, whether it's as they walk through the halls or the number of kids within each classroom. So I really hope, I know that we addressed it a little bit, but I hope as we move forward that we really separate those two things out, because hybrid is probably off the table, which we all get 100% for the elementary school, but should be a major consideration at the secondary, because if our goal is safety, the best way to have safety is to be able to social distance. And everything that I've listened to and everything, I've seen nothing that gives me any sense of comfort really in a good situation about how to do that at the secondary. So I'm wondering as we move forward how we can sort of think about doing that, really, I guess.
So we are most definitely taking the data into consideration as we move forward. We are also looking at the fact that there is a percentage of our community who feel very strongly that whether it's a hybrid model or it's a full-in model, they would not give any consideration. And so we recognize that that also contributes to reducing density within the building. So all of that data that we are collecting is critical in making a decision and giving all those points that you brought forth into consideration.
We don't know yet what that number is. In other words, like we don't really know what the percentage of people that would have to vote for a remote model would give us the flexibility to say, oh, great, we actually can now make the desks 6 feet apart in the high school, etc. We don't really know what that number is.
In terms of what the size of the classroom or the number of desks that we can put in the classroom?
Yeah, like what, I mean, I know that even like Mr. Vizzo was even saying, like, that was talking about Murphy specifically, but like, you'd really have to get your numbers pretty low in those classes to be able to maintain social distance.
18 students in a classroom to have 6 feet between the students. And we've done that in the classrooms to show what those look like. We are working with the principals at each of the secondary levels to reevaluate their master schedules to see what it would take to do that. We feel strongly that we must physically distance in addition to the use of masks as a conservative measure. So we are looking, as I had said initially, to collect some of the electives to be able to do that. And again, once we have a sense of those master schedules, I know at the high school that master schedule has already been redesigned as an alternative, and we will look at the data that comes in by the 21st. I had mentioned that we have 40% of the data in at this time. We are also allowing parents to make go back into the survey, especially after these forums, and say, you know what, I heard the forums, I changed my mind, this is how I feel. So parents will also have that opportunity. But again, I have to emphasize that we are looking for 100% participation in that parent portal, not only for the survey component, but also for the emergency contact information.
And then two really final, just quickie things. Not just the classrooms. I mean, I think that hallways is like a major thing. We've talked about this a lot. You know, that bell rings and it's Times Square at New Year's Eve. It's crazy. And then final, just, you know, piece of information, and it's come up a lot on the chat, is we really, as like you guys really, as administration, as staff, need to get mask savvy, because just even watching this now, it does not give me comfort to think that you guys are all like mask on top of things, because you're sitting in a room. I get that you're social distance, but as you're moving from spot to spot, you're not wearing a face covering with the exception of one person. And I think we're asking kids and students to do that. We need to send a message. I conveyed this to you. My kids went up for senior pictures. Staff was not wearing masks. I think people mimic what they see. We need to really, really be clear on this message that we're putting out there.
I take that, I accept that. We are, just so you know, I am way farther than 6 feet away from my.
No, I realize it, but as you were like
and
whispering something to Dawn Mason at one point, I think we just have to be very careful. I recognize you're trying really hard. It's just people are being very paying attention. Let's just say that.
I will accept that. Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Heather, before you jump off, just a quick tutorial. There's a couple of people in the chat who don't know how to do the hand raise. Can you talk them through that?
That's hilarious, because the only reason I figured it out is because somebody was nice enough to post it. You click on the little participants button at the bottom of your thing, and then all the way down at the participants thing is a little thing that says if you want to raise your hand, and then a little hand goes up by your name, and then you get to see that we want to raise and ask a question. It's very dreamy that that person did that. Otherwise, I never would have figured it out. I am not tech savvy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Of course. And for those of you, I know we're still getting people popping into the waiting room. So we're strictly conversational at this point, but you guys are welcome to use the chat room. I would strongly encourage you to please be kind and patient and civil with one another in that chat room, but I am not going to be taking any more questions from the chat. It's just easier for everyone to raise your hands, and we're going to do our very best to get to everybody. So we're going to jump back to the person who was up as Rick.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a question regarding special education for the 1211 class. If it goes remote, I'm assuming the class will remain at a 1211, or just because it's remote, it'll increase the number. And the same would apply for, you know, what's the number of kids in a DTC class as well.
Here, we will follow in the remote model, we will follow the same regulations as if students were in person. So a 1211 class will not have more than 1211 students in it if they are remote. There isn't a number of how many or a limit of the number of students in a DTC program, other than to keep it less than half the class. So we would maintain that as well.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had regarding the mask, for the exemptions, for the medical exemptions, if the person doesn't have to wear a mask and for the break that they get, which is I believe under 10 minutes, they are required to wear a shield, right? That's for the, of course, in person.
I am not aware that there is any documentation that says that they must wear a shield. If you're talking about the shield in front of their desk at the elementary level, those would definitely be in place.
In the board meeting that went on a couple of days ago, they mentioned that for kids that are required to take breaks from the mask, they will have to wear a shield, and the break mask, the breaks from the mask will be under 10 minutes. I just want to confirm that's accurate.
Masks, the shield would be in front of their desk, so they wouldn't be wearing a face shield.
Oh, okay.
So I just want to clarify that when we said shield, we were referring to the actual desk shield that the students would have in front of their desk.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jenna, Lisa, you are next.
Thank you. This sort of kind of piggybacks off of what Heather was talking about in terms of secondary and trying to promote social distancing and help with the less congestion in the hallways. Is there any possibility to mention to the principals at the secondary schools the possibility of allowing the students to carry the rolling backpacks? Because in the past they haven't been allowed. But my thought was, especially if children are going to choose to carry the plexi shields, they have to carry jackets when the weather is cooler, they have to carry all their materials, including their Chromebooks, since the lockers aren't going to be used. If we allow them to use rolling backpacks, then the handle and the backpacks themselves promote social distancing of the student in front of you and the student behind you.
We will definitely give consideration to that and speak to our building administration.
Thank you.
All right, Melissa Butters.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. First, I'd like to thank you for answering the question about the maximum number of students that will be in a remote class at the elementary level, because I know a lot of parents were concerned about that. And I do have 3 questions, all of them concern elementary students. The first is, how is the district going to deal with an influx of students going remote, either after the start of school year when kids aren't happy with the in-person, or when cases start to rise, but we're not fully shut down yet? How are we going to have enough teachers to do remote?
We will look at that, and we do have teachers that are certified substitute teachers that we would be pulling for. At the elementary level, fortunately, there is a large number of teachers who are on our substitute list who are available and would be looking for a position. So we would go to that list. We have been interviewing for the last several weeks elementary school teachers, and we have created a very long list of who we would go to in order to provide those services.
Cheryl, we have
Okay.
50 substitute teachers as well as permanent substitutes, 2 per elementary school.
Okay.
Was that audible? You got that?
And then a follow-up question to that is, in planning the initial remote class for each grade level, are we considering using the most tech-savvy teachers? Because last spring there was definitely a great disparity between teaching staff and their abilities to use remote learning.
Actually, the teachers that we would be using primarily are those teachers who are immunocompromised and can work from home, but cannot work in a classroom. All of our teachers, as Mr. Scanlon mentioned, are being professionally trained, have been, and will continue to be, and will receive continued support, whether they are teaching remotely or they're teaching in the classroom, because it won't be a one and done kind of deal, but continually teaching and supporting those teachers through our technology department. And we are designating people in each of our buildings, several people who are the most tech savvy to serve in assisting their colleagues. And so anybody who needs that additional assistance, whether they're teaching remotely from home at the elementary level or at the secondary level, doing with remote students and students in school, are receiving extensive professional development.
Right.
Okay.
Follow up with that answer is that on our professional development days on September 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, we're going to be running over 300 workshops with teachers in addition. If we are in a full remote model, if you look at the plan that is posted online and is under the link, on the Friday, while the SEL, that's the social emotional component, is being conducted in the morning, the teachers will all be involved in professional development ongoing. Because as we've gone through this crisis, even since March, new and innovative techniques have come along in programs, and we want to make sure that our teachers are getting that instruction, that professional development as quickly as possible.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then my third and final question is, you had indicated that instruction's not going to be recorded. Does that apply to the remote teaching in the elementary? And if it does, what part of the elementary instruction is then going to be asynchronous?
Instruction, as I said, the individual schedules are created by a grade level. Since we're looking to go across grade levels and across buildings with the grade levels teacher assignment, the schedule that we posted in the plan that's online again demonstrates how the timing would be set up. So the teachers will be doing a combination of, again, depending on the level, the primary level may have a lot more face-to-face time as opposed to real-time instruction where the teacher is live, but you're not necessarily seeing their face at the intermediate level and higher. So that's really the piece we're taking a look at. Again, the day itself may vary. If you're in the middle of a lesson, a good teaching lesson doesn't have a teacher speaking for 45 minutes as just a straight talk and talk lecture type scenario. So the teachers are going to have interactive capabilities. We'll be pushing students into small groups. That's what some of these programs such as Google Meet and GoGuardian have ability to. Teacher may go in and out of some of those groups and work with them. Students that are online or in the remote model at home may be coupled with students in person at the same time. So they may be able to interact that way. So the students in school will have the devices as well, will be able to work with students that are also remote. So there's a lot of various
That wouldn't apply in elementary, correct? I think that's only for secondary.
level, more the maybe the 5th and 6th grade level. The smaller primary students, we probably wouldn't do that, and do those type of things. But the teachers will be providing time for not having maybe a given assignment, say go read this, and then we're going to come back in 5 minutes and we're going to answer some questions, or go draw this item, and then we're going to look at some of the pictures and post it. That, again, the lesson itself is going to be conducted by the teacher. So the end part of the day, though, in the model will have an asynchronous component at the elementary level. So there will be available. Teachers may post some videos at that particular time or instructional pieces, but it's not going to be the full day of having this student on the system at the same time.
Okay, thank you.
So as we get to the 2-hour mark, I just want to, a couple people are asking how long does this go? Will you take all the questions? Panel, thumbs up or down? Are you okay if we continue till about 1 o'clock and try to get everybody in by then?
So we have a meeting at 1 o'clock. So if we could end like maybe 5 to 1 or 10 to 1, that would be a little bit better for us so we can prepare for the next meeting.
Okay. That sounds great. So we'll try to keep this going rather quickly, and we're going to go to Andrea Schaefer, please.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I have a couple questions. One, are you guys going to still be doing lockdown drills, and how would that go about?
Can you say that one more time? There was a bell, and I didn't hear your question.
You're too fast. Oh, I'm sorry. Are the schools still going to be performing lockdown drills? And how will that be performed?
Lockdown drills will still occur. And at the meeting on Tuesday, Mr. Blount, who is our coordinator for security and safety, will go into great detail about how that will be handled.
Is that the same thing for fire drills?
It will be the same thing for the evacuation drills, yes.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
They are required by law, and they will still occur as needed. But he will describe how that is going to be handled.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing is, will there be any after-school activities? Will there be where the cafeteria, let's say, could be for scouting or for any other organization?
Yeah, so there will be after-school activities in terms of co-curricular clubs. So our students who are in school will have an opportunity to participate in co-curricular clubs, and also those students remotely will be able to participate as well. For right now, until January of 21, we are not allowing any outside groups such as scouting or other groups to utilize our facilities as a way of just keeping cohorts together.
Okay, all right, thank you so much.
Very welcome.
Thank you. Tracy Harris, you're up.
Hi, I just have one question. I was wondering if the state has officially accepted 3 Villages plan, or are they still waiting for the 3 forums and such to make that determination? And when would that determination be made?
I really don't know when the determination would be made, but we have not received any correspondence from the state level or from the Department of Health indicating that our plan is of concern, or they have not listed or indicated to us that they have any questions at this time. So whether or not, when we receive that notification, we have not been told.
Thank you. And just a reminder for those who are just joining us, we are only doing questions by conversation. So please don't put them in the chat, though you all are welcome to use the chat among yourselves. And we're going to go to Barbara G, please. Barbara G, do we have you? All right, Dana Powell, how about you?
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. I know that the school district is trying their best to follow the guidelines of the CDC and recommendations by Cuomo, and I understand that mask wearing is one of those. However, along with that, similar to indoor dining, it seems as though as long as there's somewhat 6-foot distancing, you are allowed to remove your mask while seated. In other words, every time somebody's standing up, the mask is put on. If you're walking to the bathroom, if you're walking in a hallway, or if you're waiting and seated in an area that's congested at the front of the restaurant. Is there a reason why we are not choosing to follow those guidelines inside of a classroom? And or if we do decide that maybe we can wear masks or not wear masks inside the classroom, is there any consideration being done to that? I know originally the district was for that, then they changed their mind. And so I'm kind of curious, is there any consideration being made to the possibility of not wearing masks while seated in a classroom?
So the district looked at this information very carefully, and as you may or may not know, with regard to the Department of Health, consistency, there are some inconsistencies between that and other information from the American Academy of Pediatrics. In listening to the feedback and also reviewing this information very carefully, we are trying to put in place a number of redundant measures so that we can provide for the health and safety of our students. We do feel at this point it is really critical that we have all of these measures at least to start, and we will continue to make appropriate reevaluations of these issues. However, I will quote for you from the American Academy of Pediatrics. If desks are already 6 feet apart in the classroom, why should children still wear masks all day during instruction? This is the answer. In order to make the indoor classroom setting as safe as we possibly can, mask wearing is advised at all times. It may sometimes be difficult for children to stay 6 feet apart. Masks can help prevent the spread of the virus in respiratory droplets released when coughing and sneezing. In addition, masks will help prevent children from spreading germs by touching their nose and mouth. Mask wearing is a simple and effective measure we can take to keep our children and families safe. So right now, Ms. Powell, I think the best approach for us to do is to put these measures in place and continually reevaluate as we go through the year.
Okay, so it will not be reconsidered before the start of school. This is a definite.
It would not be before the start of school.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Cax, forgive me, I'm going to jump over you because I know you've had a chance to ask one question. If we have time, I'll circle back. So we're going to go to Michael Graziano, please.
Hi, how are you? My question is, I have a couple questions. How will special ed services be rendered in a remote learning, especially if you have group or individual speech for sessions in an IEP? Is there going to be live scheduled services? And the reason for my concern is that when we went to remote learning in the spring, this was not offered when we went remote, and services were not rendered.
Right. So we will, our plan is for the providers, the related service providers, and the special education teachers to provide instruction in a live manner.
Okay. Okay. And will I be told or explained or a schedule provided prior to the first day of school? Or I get it, it takes a couple weeks, in the beginning of the school year.
Look on the reopening plan on the website. There is, in the schedules, it is indicated which blocks the special ed teachers and related service providers might work with children. They have to put the schedule together for students working remotely, just as they do for students who are in person.
Okay, yeah, I know it takes a couple weeks to get that ready, but all right, cool, thank you.
Thank you so much. Elizabeth on the iPad.
Hi, thank you very much, everyone. I know we've had discussion around the in-classroom setting, the hybrid model, and I just had some additional questions in regards to the remote option. It's also been shared that on the remote option, just like it was in the spring, that many of the online resources will be available. Now, I've always seen those online resources as being more supplemental from an education standpoint. So going forward and looking at the fall from a remote learning perspective, what would the split, let's say, be on, using those online resources and links versus actual teaching from a teacher? So that's one. And then my second question is actually quite different, so I'll hold it until the end.
Okay. So if you read the plan carefully, we keep referring to real-time teacher-directed instruction. That's what we're referring to. The teacher will be live at all times throughout the course of the lesson being taught. It's not going to be that, okay, I've talked to you for 2 minutes and then go off and watch this video for the next 38 minutes of class. So that's the big difference from the majority of the instruction that was conducted in the spring to what we're expecting going forward. So that the teacher will be live the entire time. Now, as I mentioned, that does not mean necessarily you're going to see the teacher's face all the time on the screen. It could be that the teacher is doing a voiceover over a lesson and it's interacting live with the students, or it could be that the teacher is going in and out of the groups, as I also mentioned, and doing different groups of it, but circling back with the entire class at the end of the lesson. So independent work will be given in between the lesson, but the teacher will be able to interact and see what's going on among the students in those lessons. Again, this is why we're doing all this training with the teachers and have been doing this training since March and preparing what this virtual setting will look like. Basically, everyone is being prepared that we are going to maybe out completely and everyone's going to have to be online. So we want to make sure. And that was also the reason why we constructed the day the way it is, the secondary following the schedule and the elementary following a modification of the schedule so that there is a finality to the day. There's way too many students and staff going way beyond the scope of the day for wee hours of the morning in some cases. We do not want that to occur again. There needs to be a finality of the day for families and to recover and to teachers, the teachers union and the teachers prepare for what's going to happen for the following day, getting their lessons ready.
So what percent do you think is going to be about actual instruction then? That, whether it's the teacher's, faces there or just voiceovers, but really leading a class?
It's not going to be a voiceover lesson. That's not, again, what I keep repeating is that it's real time. It's real time. So I can't give you a percentage because in the lesson, I taught history at Ward Melville High School. So I can tell you, for part of the lesson, I may have students in groups. So you're trying to tie us down to a percentage, and I can't give you that. It would depend on a teacher's lesson in an elementary school or a secondary school where they would physically see the teacher on the screen. But as I said, the time that the teacher will be there, they'll be there for the entire duration of the lesson, whether it's 40 minutes at the secondary level or the 45 minutes at the elementary level, the teacher will be present.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that because, as the mother of a second grader, the spring experience was, I would say about 5% of any sort of interaction, just as a reference point.
Yes, but the primary level, because of the nature of those students, they're going to see a lot more face-to-face interaction with the teacher than perhaps the secondary.
Yeah. All right, great. And then my second question is just, here we are on August 14th and the survey's due on August 21st. And, thank you for everyone there. I know how many hours I can only imagine you're putting in, right? Then you got to put everyone into their classrooms and into their settings. are we likely to be starting school right after Labor Day, or are there actually discussions in regards to, having a later start?
Okay, so the reason we tied this survey, unlike the first survey that you received, which was Qualtrics, this survey is tied directly to our parent portal, which is tied to Infinite Campus, which is our student support system. So we're able to see data as it's coming in live, knowing which students might be being pulled out of a class. So there's not a cross-reference or an intermediate piece to this. So it makes it much more facile for us to be able to look at that data very carefully and be able to create those schedules much more easily. So with greater facilitation. So we are not considering starting school later than what we had indicated in February. The school will start the day after Labor Day, unless of course something happens with our governor and he does say that we have to start school later. But at this point, the plan is to begin school on the day after Labor Day.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to try to squeeze in 2 more questions quickly. Nancy, we're going to go to you.
Thank you for your time. I am a parent of an incoming pre-K and an incoming 4th grader. It was stated earlier that information regarding the pre-K schedule, procedures, and other details will be provided. Also, it was stated earlier that photos of elementary classroom configurations will be uploaded to the opening section of the 3 Village website. I'm just wondering when those details will be provided. Will they be provided before the August 21st deadline when we need to make our selections? Are they going to be provided after the fact?
Okay, so
Yes.
So with regard to the pictures that you'll get to see of the classrooms, you will get to see those ahead of time. With regard to the arrival and dismissal, the building principals are in the process of creating videos because there is a lot of construction going on at many of our facilities. We are trying to make sure that you have a clear video of that. So we may be a little postponed after August 21st of showing the arrival and dismissal procedures, but you will get to see pictures of the classroom prior to August 21st.
What about just procedures in general? The pre-K level, there's a lot of collaboration, there's a lot of interaction between children traditionally, and I want to understand what a typical day will be for my 4-year-old child. So I want to make an informed decision before submitting that survey.
That information will be shared at the forum on Tuesday.
Okay, thank you. And just one more question. I hear you saying that many activities will be held outdoors, weather permitting. I just want to understand what are the specifics of weather permitting. We do live in a climate where we have, temperatures that exceed a certain point and also dip below. So what does that mean? I want to know how often will my child be outdoors?
Well, we will try to get the children outdoors as much as we possibly can. So we know September, October, November, the temperatures do begin to drop a bit, although there is variation, as we know, here. So if it's not terribly cold or raining or snowing, we would probably try to get the children outside for periods of time. We've done that with our pre-K all last year and the year before, bringing the children out periodically to engage in activities, to play on the play yard, because they do like to be outside, and we think that the fresh air is good for them.
Of
so
course.
to do that, we will take advantage of making that a point for the children.
Okay, but as of okay, so right now you can't define weather permitting. I just want to understand, because if recess instruction and multiple things are being dependent upon outdoor space, I just want to understand if from November, if it's below 40 degrees.
Right, so in our calendar, we actually indicate at what points children don't go outside because there's the wind chill factor. So we would be following all of those guidelines that we've always followed, whether it's COVID or not, in bringing.
Okay. I'll use that resource. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Sumati.
Thank you very much for the chance. Good afternoon, and I really appreciate all the effort that has been taken through by each one of you. And maybe my question is repetitive, I'm not sure, but I still have this question with the remote learning thing. Through the course of this meeting, I have understood that if we choose remote learning, we would be getting the Go Math book or paperwork from school. And my question is, who is going to grade it? How they are going to grade it? Would we have to submit the Go Math book somewhere, like go to the schooling district and give the book to the teacher so that they can go through and see whether the child has done appropriately or not? With the math, I understand that, but what with the reading? My child is going to be in the first grade and they are just starting to learn to read. How are you going to grade the child's reading?
Okay, so there were several pieces to that with the different subject areas. There will be no paper exchange back to school once you receive the books. That remains at home. For the interest of health, we don't want to have any contamination. We can't disinfect paper. So if any items have to be uploaded to the remote setting, they would have to be done so through a computer or a scanner, or even if you took a picture on your cell phone and sent it. And that we saw a great deal of occurring in the spring at all levels. So we wouldn't want the items coming back. What teachers are doing right now is that they're also constructing the ability to have some of our books put into plastic bags and distributed out that way. Same with art materials, some of the other materials that we have, so that they're available. So that would be available for the remote student as well. The items that would not be returned, they would be held on to. So we want to make sure that. As far as grading, if you're in the remote setting at the elementary level, the remote teacher will be doing all the grading. In the secondary level, because the remote is with the actual classroom, that classroom teacher will be doing the grading. But those items would be submitted electronically.
Okay, I do have another question that is with respect to remote learning itself. I was told about I had a letter last year about the RTL program where it was about literacy and the child was getting help for reading and instructions were provided. Now, how would this program work if it is remote learning?
Certainly, the reading teacher that would be assigned for the RTI model would be online with you at the particular time that would be in the child's schedule.
You would be doing it remotely with the child having a one-on-one time with the teacher?
That's what we're going to work on that piece about the one-to-one component. We may have to be one-to-one, or there might be chances for group learning. It all depends on what our numbers look like.
Okay, and the last question is, elementary students, first, let it be kindergartners or first grade or second grade, they are not so good at sitting in one place and having a one-on-one discussion on remote learning. How much do you expect parents to support the child so that if the parent has to look for a job or is going to start a new job, do they have that kind of flexibility, or they should just give up the idea of taking up a job and just be home with the child so that your child is safe and still getting the remote education?
I can't comment on your personal circumstances in your home and what would be occurring. The support that will be provided on a remote setting must have, if your child is not capable of sitting there for the duration of time, there needs to be some type of supervision in that environment. But that's personally something that needs to be answered by your family, and how to go about doing that. You will receive, as Ms. Pedisich indicated, what the schedule will be like, so that, again, different than the spring, you know exactly what times your child will be need to be online and working with the teacher. So to help you create that schedule for you at the home.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all the patience and the answers. Hopefully we have a situation where everybody is able to be on board without much difficulty. Thank you very much.
Very well. Have a good weekend.
And
You too.
I also thank everybody for participating today. This is going to conclude the Family Restart Forum for today, sponsored by the Three Village School District and the Three Village Joint Council of PTAs. A recording of this forum will be available on YouTube. You can check the district website or your PTA websites for the information on how to find that. Don't forget to tune in for the final forum, which will be Tuesday at 6 p.m. with a panel from the Restart Task Force members. I know there are a few that didn't get your questions. I apologize for that, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I suspect if you email those to the district, you will hopefully have those included at that final forum on Tuesday. Most importantly, don't forget to fill out the district's annual update application and reopening survey on the Infinite Campus Parent Portal. This is how you will make the selections for your student's learning scenario, and those forms must be completed by Friday, August 21st. Again, thank you everybody for participating. I wish you and your family good health. Bye-bye.
Thank you.